This is the Cereal at Midnight podcast. Howdy and welcome to the Cereal at Midnight podcast. My name is Heath Holland and I am talking this week to author Jonathan Melville, who's written books about Tremors, about Highlander, and about Bill Forsyth's Local Hero. I have a lot of admiration for Jonathan and the detail, just like the research that goes into these books is huge. And I wanted to, I knew that I wanted to get to like the process questions, like, how do you research, what's your research process? What is your archive look like when it comes to, paper materials and stuff like this? But I also, I wanted to ask him, when you write a book about a subject like this, how much of yourself is in that, because you are telling the tale. There, you can always see the author in the telling of the tale. And when you're writing about something else, that's interesting to me. But what I was not expecting is what a collecting chat this turned into. So this is, I think, the longest episode of the podcast to date, barring the commentary that I've posted. I think I've posted one commentary to the feed so far. But this is the longest chat we've ever had. And it was just like it flew by. So we talk about all kinds of stuff. We talk about Stephen J. Cannell shows, collecting Stephen J. Cannell shows all over the world because he's in Scotland, I'm in America. We talk about Doctor Who. We talk about Jim Henson. Of course, we talk about Highlander. We talk about Tremors. We talk about the subjects of his books. But if you are wanting some collecting talk, man, there's a ton of it here. And I had an absolute blast. I say it in the episode, but I'm going to tell you now that I'm going to link to his books, his website, his YouTube channel in the description of this episode. So you scroll down, there it is. If you like what you hear, go support creators, go support independent writers, authors, creators. So thank you so much. Without further ado, Mr. Jonathan Melville. I will tell you, like, years ago, I went through this purge phase and I got rid of so much. I took like records, it was like Beatles' White Album. I donated to the Goodwill store. I donated to a charity, right? Why in the world would I do this? And so then I realized, I was like, oh no, I went too far. And then it's the process of trying to get stuff back. But at the same time, you don't want just clutter all around.
Well, I mean, I think the thing about magazines and books and DVDs and Blu-rays that we obviously have a lot of is, I think we are, and there are a lot of people like us, but we're still in the minority. Yeah. A magazine for me that I bought in 1995 is still as valid today as it was in 1995. Just because it's. Whereas I appreciate that the magazines are meant to be ephemeral, I suppose, and you, in theory, get rid of them 2 months later or a year later.
Right.
But for me, if there's good content in there, then why would you not keep it? And of course, that's the problem, because then you keep too many of them.
Right.
And 30 years later, you're like, what do I do with all these magazines?
As you're building archives, because there's a lot of research that goes into your books, right? So do you have like huge reservoir, like huge resources? Like I interviewed, Austin Trunick about the Canon Film Guide, right? And he's like, this is the box I'm working on right now, and it's like this is printouts of stuff, right? What's yours like?
Not quite as bad as that, really. I think I try and do a lot more online these days. I do, and I'll order books or magazines for research and maybe as I need them. I do have a lot of books, of course, and a lot of film books downstairs and in the attic, and going to libraries, like for example with Highlander, I think it was Highlander, I went down to London to the BFI library there on the South Bank, and also went to their kind of their archives. I can't quite remember where that is, but you have to get a train there, and it's quite difficult to get there. But went to look at things in person. So, and also to the BBFC, managed to go there and sort of look through their files and things. So a lot of that stuff, of course, you can't own because they have it and it's difficult to get hold of. So that's where a lot of the research comes from. But as I say, things like Internet Archive, which is an amazing resource that I don't think enough people use or pay for. I try and give them some money when I can because they deserve it. I've used them enough. But just the amount, and you've probably found this as well, the amount of, you're talking about your Western history books that you have and you sort of collect. And I suspect some of those might be on Internet Archive. And for those of us that can't afford it or just can't find them, that's an amazing resource.
They're actually not, because I tried to
They're
find them
not
there.
there,
They're not
right?
there. I wish it's my responsibility to scan them and get them there now.
Well, it's just a fantastic resource, isn't it? And there's so many
Yeah.
rarities on there that, of course, would otherwise disappear. And that is the other thing, just that we could talk for hours about, again, going back to that thing about old magazines that you're sort of meant to throw out. But there are amazing interviews in there that will never be seen again. And for people like me, they're just fantastic resources to then go back and say, oh, this producer of Highlander was interviewed in 1989 or something in this magazine, and that was the only time he gave that quote, and you'll never know that otherwise. So
Right.
yeah, it's really it's fascinating, and yeah, just like we say, it's dangerous as well, because our attics and things can just fill up so quickly.
Yeah. Do you, as a writer, as an author, do you care how someone reads your books? Do you care if they buy physical copies? Do you care if they buy an ebook?
No, but I know that most people buy physical.
Mhm.
I know that for the Tremors book, because I self-published the Tremors book, which is not anything I've really shouted about on Twitter, because I think when I first brought it out, I maybe thought there was a bit of a stigma attached to that. And then it just didn't, nobody asked, and nobody pointed out, nobody's ever really said to me, I've mentioned it a few times, it's not a total secret or anything, but
Right.
uh, but because I self-published it, I can see what the orders are like, and I can see through Amazon.com who's ordered it and what version. And print, I couldn't give you the percentage, but it's definitely must be something like 60% or 70% physical over ebook.
That's interesting.
Because I think, once again, it's fans. My stuff is niche, and we love to own things related to
Yeah.
the things that we love. And so yeah, so your question though, no, I don't mind. I mean, I buy Kindle books all the time, but
Mhm.
mainly it's for this is not a negative thing, but books like McFarland, who do these fantastic history books, or Bear Manor sometimes as well. I've got Austen's book, first version in print,
Yeah.
but some of these in the UK particularly, the price is extortionate, and it probably is quite expensive in the US. But over here, we have to factor in postage, because the McFarlane books you can't buy in the shops here, in bookstores. So you've got to add on, if you want the physical copy, you're paying something like 30 or 40 pounds, plus maybe the same again for postage. So for those things, I'll sometimes wait for special offers on Kindle.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just couldn't afford them.
This is one of the things that I want to talk to you about with you being in Scotland. Now, I want to make sure I couch this question. I asked Lee Gambin, like what it was like to be a fan in Australia when he was younger, and he was like, "Well, it's not like we were just like we pushed the kangaroos out of the way." Like he when you like being a fan in Scotland, like I know you don't like. There's a guy playing bagpipes and you walk out of a castle. Like that's not my question, but
Yeah.
like, what was it like to be? You are one of us, right? You are a geek in the terms of like a pop culture aficionado. You're going beyond what I think most people consume entertainment, right? You were people like us, you talk about in the Highlander book, you talk about your kind of discovery of like, what the movie meant to you seeing it at that screening. When did what was sort of like youth, like your younger years, did you know you were a super passionate fan, or was it just kind of how everybody talked about stuff?
Oh, good question. I mean, I think my earliest TV memory is watching The Muppets. We I don't know if that's the right term. We were born in the same year. Not quite. No, I was born in 1976, and the Muppets in July 76. And the Muppets came on TV in October, I think it was 1976. And so we grew up together.
Had you had access to Sesame Street before the Muppets?
We did have Sesame Street
Okay.
on, but it's a very complicated thing, actually. That's a whole other podcast.
Okay.
Sesame Street in the UK, because I spoke to someone who worked on Sesame Street a couple of years ago and co-created Fraggle Rock, and told him about, who's English, he's English, And I said, oh, I remember watching Sesame Street when I was very young and in the UK. And he said, no, it was never shown in the UK. And it turns out, yes, it was. It was shown on ITV, which is our third channel, if you want to call it that, for a few years, and it disappeared. So, but I would have been, but no, I think probably Muppets came first though for me.
Okay.
Because that, as I say, I was probably 2-3 years old, and I remember it being on the TV and having a Dr. Teeth poster above my bed, and being a bit scared actually of Dr. Teeth, because he's just a scary looking character actually, certainly when you're young. But then the next version, I won't go through everything I remember, but bizarrely the next thing I remember really, we moved to Australia when I was 5 years old from Scotland, only for a year. But I vividly remember The Greatest American Hero and that theme tune being on TV, and I would have been 5. And so that has stuck with me forever, since then. So I think there's that, there's those sort of weird things and because American Hero is not a kid's show, although of course I think it does appeal to it's probably 2 children, or did, because it's such a wacky kind of show. But it's not a kid's show. But fast forward, I suppose, I was just a fan of, was I a fan of things? I don't know if there was a magazine here called Lookin' magazine, and every week it would come out and it had articles about all the new TV shows. So the A-Team, there's a comic strip, I think, for the A-Team in there. And really? Dukes of Hazzard might have been in there. Robin of Sherwood. I don't know if you've ever seen Robin of Sherwood.
Oh yeah, with
one of my favorite shows.
Jason Connery was in one of the. Didn't he? Yeah.
Michael Praed and then Jason Connery, and I remember those. So those were on TV here, and again that would have been sort of 84-ish. And I remember buying the magazine, and I remember having a copy of Lookin', and it had Michael Praed on the front cover, and just being really happy because there's Robin Hood, and lending it to one of my neighbours, this young, someone the same age as me, and he read it and gave it back, and he'd ripped the cover. So even at that point, I can remember being really unhappy. Yeah. And I would have been maybe 7. So there was obviously something there, but this sort of the fan gene, as you might call it.
That's it. Yeah, that's kind of one of the I wonder is like, do we have a gene? Because there's like a collector gene, there's the fan gene, because I can relate to so much of what you're saying. And it's like we're born this way, right? Like we connect with these things, but it's already there. Something's already there.
Yeah, again, it goes back to that wanting to collect things when I was even that age, and wanting to keep this magazine that was just rubbish, really. It wasn't anything much to it. But when I properly, again, just jumping a bit to try and keep things short, but when I properly became a fan, I think was we moved back from Australia back to Edinburgh again, only within about a year or so. And then when I was 10, we moved from Edinburgh up to the Highlands. Up to this little place called Galsby, and I do mention that in the books because it is part of me, and it's part of my journey to becoming a fan. Mm-hmm. Because we went from living in the city. I remember going to see, I just tweeted just now, favorite films you can watch over and over again. Number 1 is Back to the Future, and I remember seeing that at the cinema when it came out, just as I remember going to see Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones and these sorts of movies. And then we moved up to the Highlands in 1986. And I lost access to the cinema because the cinema was about 50 miles away, and we didn't have a car. You could get the train or the coach, but it wasn't so easy to get down. So anyway, I got more into Doctor Who at that point. In the UK, we had on Saturday nights for many years the A-Team on opposite Doctor Who. So Doctor Who was on BBC One. On an ITV, we had the A-Team, and we only had 4 channels, I think, at that point. So there wasn't much to choose from. Yeah. So for many years I watched the A-Team, and then when I was about 10 or 11 or 12, I started watching Doctor Who, and that got me hooked on buying video cassettes and books about things. And then that was my gateway drug into everything else, because I realized that the actors that were in Doctor Who were in other shows like The Avengers or The Prisoner. And
who's your doctor? When you think of Doctor Who, who's your doctor?
Well, the doctor I suppose I was watching at the time was Sylvester McCoy, but my favorite doctor is Patrick Troughton. just think
Wow.
he's fantastic. I love
And he's
how,
the one with, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's the one with the least surviving episodes now, right?
yeah, yeah.
We have audio, but we don't have a lot of video for a lot of that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, so it's frustrating. Although some stories do turn up. There were, 5 or 6 years ago, two complete stories turned up, and
Yeah.
which was amazing. So there's some magic being a fan because things do turn up again. But yeah, so that was kind of when it all took off for me. I suppose was around about I don't know, probably 89 is when Doctor Who disappeared off the TV. I became a fan of Doctor Who in 1988, and then it kind of got cancelled in 1989.
Showed up right at the end. Yeah.
And
What's this episode's survival? Oh.
yeah.
Um,
So
that's
anyway,
it.
yeah. So that's kind of a potted history of my. But you'll notice there's a few we've talked about Cannell because we both loved Stephen J. Cannell.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. One of my heroes.
Yeah.
And but there's at 5 years old I was watching his shows, and thank goodness for it because it's I'm so lucky to have seen them.
I'm going back now because a lot of them are getting reissued on DVD from a company here in the US. So I'm looking right now. I was like Wise Guy, Renegade. Is Wise Guy Cannell? I can't remember. Anyway, Hunter is the one I'm revisiting right now, and I'm just like, man, every episode is like a little movie. Like it's so cinematic, and the lighting and everything. Like it's really fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I found another DVD just because we'll talk about all these things. But I've got this is the sort of part. I'm jumping around, but
no, that's fine.
This show came out. This DVD set came out. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and it's kind of a Stephen J. Cannell. All of these are TV movies from Cannell. So you've got The Return of Hunter, The Greatest American Heroine, The Great Pretender, and Jake Lasseter, Justice on the Bayou. But this is this weird sort of thing that I have had to import from the US because it came out, I think, in Walmart or something.
Oh, wow.
And it's got the little Cannell little logo on the back. You can see the little C from when he used to pull out the thing. But but again, I'm jumping. But you did ask about being a fan in Scotland. An hour ago, you asked me that.
No. This is great.
And I suppose I did for a long time. I suppose things like the A-Team. When I was younger, we used to play it in the playgrounds. You used to run around and who's BA and who's Murdoch and things like that. But then the older you get, that stops, of course. And you can't do that when you're 15 or 16. But I think I probably was. I think I became without becoming a sort of therapy session. I think when I moved from the big city to the Highlands, I became a little bit more introverted. I think because I didn't know so many people.
Yeah.
Looking back, I can sort of see that. So I think I kind of escaped into TV and used that as just a way to, rather than going out all the time, was maybe watching TV more. So, but the great thing is we had things like mail order. Of course, you could send off for books, and we did go to down to Inverness, which was the nearest city. We would go down every, if not monthly, then every couple of months. And I remember going and buying a game from my computer, and maybe a magazine, and maybe a video of Doctor Who or some other thing that I'd seen in a magazine. So we weren't completely cut off from this stuff, but London was always, of course, the place where everything happened and all the exciting things. You read your Doctor Who magazine and read about events and conventions, and you just couldn't go to them from Galsby because it was so far away. So, but I clearly managed to keep buying all my things, and I didn't feel too cut off at all. But also we didn't have a video recorder. I remember it took many years for us. I don't know if it was like this for you. I'm sure other people have had it, but when Doctor Who was on, I remember it would have been in the McCoy era, going on holiday for when one of the episodes was on TV, and we didn't have a video. So I can remember getting my granny to watch the episode so that I could phone her up from being holiday and ask her what happened in the episode. The poor woman, just going, and then the Daleks went down a corridor, and
that's crazy.
That's what you had to do before
fuming,
I suppose. But But
It
yeah,
was hard for an American. So I got into Doctor Who really in high school. It was in the 90s and the early 90s. Doctor Who showed on PBS here, public television, but it was very hard to find. And what I got into was the VHS tapes, the video cassettes, and they were expensive. I mean, they were like, $25 per tape 30 years ago. So that's a lot of money.
yeah,
And that was, and no one knew what it was. So it was kind of just me isolated. That's one of the reasons I wanted to hear what your story was. It was just me. And I had nobody to talk to about it. It was pre-internet, really. And but discovering these worlds, right, and having these in jokes, I'm like, oh, I'm going to name my computer Gallifrey or whatever, these little things that are you only
yeah,
um and so yeah, it's these little like fandom for me was, and I also grew up in the South. I should like in the American South, it's no, I'm not in the country, but it's pretty far from, you know, from the London of, it's far from where anything would be happening. And so it was just like a lot of this stuff I was kind of just on my own. And
mm,
I guess we take a lot of identity from these things. I know you take a lot of identity from your Scottish heritage because you talk about it in the Highlander book, and I know you're very plugged into what's happening with the Scottish film scene. And I don't know, I think that it's all connected. I think all of these things shape us and turn us into who we eventually become. Um, and I don't know. I don't even know if I'm asking a question as much as I'm just. It's interesting to me, right? How the things like Doctor Who and the Muppets and moving to the Highlands, that forms your connection with Highlander when you eventually see it.
yeah,
And which is crazy to me because that movie is so not Scottish, like it's Christopher Lambert and it's
yeah.
an Australian
Well,
director and the whole there can be only one, it's but it works. For whatever reason it works. It cuts through all of that.
well, I mean, I've said this before, and but I think in Scotland, we, we're a small country. We've not traditionally had what you might call a film or TV industry. I mean, the UK has a film and TV industry, but really traditionally that was London, again, England, London. Thankfully, that's changed a lot now. We now in the city I'm in just now in Edinburgh, we now have a film studio, which is co-owned by Jason Connery, who we've already mentioned.
Yeah,
Um,
wow. Call
but
back.
that's only opened in the last 3 or 4 years. And there was talk of a film studio for 30 years or 40 years. In fact, Sean Connery was talking about one 30 years ago. So in Scotland, it's just this thing of if something is set here, we'll claim it as our own, I think. So yeah, Highlander, as you say, is not very Scottish, of course, and it's yeah, but it's ours, I suppose. And Sean Connery is in it, although he doesn't play a Scot, of course. But
Yeah.
um, so there's something about that, and I suppose I don't know. I mean, I didn't when I wrote the books, Highlander and Local Hero. I wasn't sort of really. It's hard to remember exactly what I was thinking at the time. It was more about just things I enjoyed and films I enjoyed that hadn't had books written about them, I suppose.
Right.
But yes, the fact that they were set here, two of them did help, I suppose. But
Well, what's interesting about what you just said is that, we grew, obviously you and I are from two completely different parts of the world. We're close to the same age, but we share so much. And like, I'm a huge Highlander fan. Again, not a lot of people to talk to about this. For years, as a Highlander fan, for years, I was hoping someone would write, like the book that you wrote about, to tap into how was this created? Because people like Highlander, but they watch it on VHS or whatever, and then they forget about it. That's not, but
yeah,
you getting the story out there and talking to the people that you talk to, I've wanted something like that for years and years. And so that connection exists there now. Because I'm like, this guy gets it like I get it. Even though you don't like, so it's interesting. We can talk about this too. I want your thoughts on this because you don't really care for the sequels, which are terrible. The sequels were terrible. I do really like the series. We can talk about the series too. But being a fan of something and not buying into every aspect of it, right? Like that's something we see a lot now. Like, well, I like the original Star Wars movies. I hate the prequels and I don't like the sequels. And they're like it's like fandom puts up these walls. They're like, well, how much of a fan are you? Do you like so and so?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of identity comes from being like, for a long time, I was a Star Wars guy and I would read Star Wars novels at school and things like that. And people like they knew me. I was the Star Wars kid. I was a Highlander kid too. But being able to say, you know what, I don't think that The Quickening is a very good movie. I don't think that the third movie is a very good movie. There's something to that. There's like a, I don't know, it's an ownership. Did you wrestle with that at all? You were like, I don't know if I like these sequels.
I think I've probably possibly felt for a long time I should like them
Right.
because I say you're a fan of something,
Yeah.
so you're
Like you're
kind of
supposed to. Right.
yeah, yeah. So I probably did think that, and I did keep giving Highlander 2 chances, and I kept trying it again. And I remember being in bought Highlander 2, the Renegade version, in Hong Kong. I remember coming back. I went to Australia again for another years later to backpack. On the way back, I think it was the way home. Went to Hong Kong on the way. Anyway, I remember going into HMV and buying, bizarrely, Highlander the Renegade version. So something was to have to then carry that halfway across the world was a bit odd. But so I was trying, but no, I just yeah, just something. I think at some point I just thought there's just too much in the world
Yeah.
to I don't
Life's
know
too
to think
short.
about. I don't know. You have to be you have to focus these days because there is so much out there, and you have to jettison a lot of things about that are on TV. Like The Last of Us, I feel a lot of pressure. Is it The Last of Us? Yeah,
Yeah, it
Last of
is.
Us. I feel a lot of pressure to watch that, and I think I want to, but I don't have time. But I should, but
Yeah.
I don't want to. But and I did start it the other night, and I haven't gone back to it. I'd like to, but
Yeah.
anyway, and so I don't know if that really answers the question, but no, you're right. I think people just have to, in a way, like Doctor Who as well. There's so much out there now with novels and audiobooks and you know comic books from different companies that it's just so difficult to keep track of it all. It's incredible. It's that thing you hear again and again about people talking about scrolling through streaming channels, and by the time they've decided what to watch, they could have watched the film because it's taken them an hour.
Right.
And that's the same. I'm the same. There's so much, and I just get that guilt that I'm not watching something new. And I want to watch Northern Exposure. I bought the Blu-rays to that recently, and I've got Magnum PI Blu-rays, and
Is Northern Exposure on Blu-ray?
yeah, yeah.
I
Well, it
didn't know
certainly is
that.
here. I don't know about the US, but
Well, I don't think we have that on Blu-ray.
it's
We have
uncut and it's
DVD.
got all the music as well.
Wow. It's a good show. It's like Twin Peaks light, you know. It's
Yeah,
like a happier Twin Peaks where
totally.
it's
Yeah, and I
mostly
remember
okay.
Yeah, and I remember it being on at the time, although I wasn't, I didn't watch all the episodes. I had a friend who I'm now jealous of, and I wish I'd listened to him because I remember he had the T-shirt, and I remember him having the book, and I used to watch the odd episode, but he was obsessed by it. So now I'm just trying to get back into that. But again, that's probably 100 episodes or something. I'm not sure how many.
Yeah, something like that.
But what do you do? Do you just watch that every night? I've got Hill Street Blues. Bought that on DVD a few years ago, the complete series,
Yeah.
because you can't watch it. You can watch on Channel 4 here, which is well, it's Channel 4, and you can watch it on their free streaming channel. But the episodes are so cut, edited to within an inch of their life. And the same with St. Elsewhere. Actually, they've got St. Elsewhere on there, which is great, and I've tried watching them. But there's just big bits cut out, and I've
What
watched
are they
some of them.
cutting? What are
I've
they
like
cutting out?
What are they cutting out? Well, I don't know because I've not I've not seen full episodes.
Well, there's no time
But
limitation on a streaming service, right? So what are they? Is it
I
are they
think what
editing
they
for
probably
content?
did, they probably repeated them. They probably showed them on Channel 4 maybe 10 years ago maybe in the morning, and an early slot perhaps. And there's things like there's I think it's like bits of violence. So some of these shows they do have, like, I suppose St. Elsewhere is sort of set in the almost the inner city, but
Right.
there will be people coming in. There's an episode with a someone famous. I can't remember who it is now. Oh, Tim Robbins is in an episode, and he's got a gun, I think. and I think he'd maybe shoot someone, and I think that's cut. And I remember there's a scene where someone jumps off a roof, I think, and I just remember a really weird cut and thinking they clearly showed something there, and we're not getting it. But anyway, that's a sort of other subject. Although St. Elsewhere does deserve to be on DVD at least, or Blu-ray. Such a great show, and that, of course, was produced by the guys that went on to do Northern Exposure. But that's the sort of stuff that we do, isn't it? And people watching this, of course, are the sort of people that will search out these obscure. I mean, St. Elsewhere, and that's a whole other subject. We could be doing this for hours. That what is obscure TV? You know, the fact that something was, and I've had this discussion many times with people who say, "Why do you watch old films, or why do you watch old TV shows?" And I'm like, well, they haven't always been old. You know, when they came out, they were brand new, and they were great, and they're still great. It's just they're a bit older now. But the fact that we will happily sit and watch Hill Street Blues or Hunter. I mean, nobody's watching. Of course, some people are watching Hunter, but it is funny. It's funny. It's strange being a fan of this old stuff now, and people do look at you funny if you talk about it. Not necessarily the circles that I'm in. I mean, I went round to a friend's the other night, and there were 3 of us there, and we watched an episode of a show called Rent-A-Ghost, which is a kids show from 1978 or 9 on the BBC. And we could have watched anything. We could have watched Marvel movies, but we watched this rickety old TV show from the 70s with terrible CSO and ghosts sort of coming through the wall, and you can see bits wobbling. But
have you ever watched Garth Marenghi's Dark Place?
Yes, I have. I love it.
Isn't it amazing? I love that show.
Went to a live event just about a fortnight ago with the guy Matthew Holness, who I think he created it, didn't he, or co-created it?
Yeah.
Garth Marenghi himself. Yeah, he did a stage tour reading his new book. I don't know if you've read his book, Terror Tome.
I have. I was not sure if the book was real or not. I thought that maybe it was just a meme. It's a real book.
It's a real book, and I'd recommend getting the audio book if you can, the Audible version, because he of course reads it in that tone of voice and that persona. But no, that was a great show. That was Channel 4 as well. Channel 4 is such a great channel. It's a great, so many great things from them.
Well, and in the tradition of so many things that I love that are based out of the UK, there's like 8 episodes of that show, and then it's gone. You know, there's just a few. But there's a purity to that too, and that's one of the things that I admire about that model, is because here we water down so much. Doctor Who's an exception for you guys, I guess, you know, over there, because it's been over on the air since 60. Well, it was off for a while, obviously, 89 to 2005, but it's been around for well over half a century.
Well, it's the 60th anniversary this year.
Yeah. But there's a purity to, like, this is the concept, this is the idea, and we're going to do this, and then that's it, and just enjoy it. And I actually really like that. And that's one of the things about Hunter. Maybe that's one of the things that I like about it, is because it's just this pure thing, and it's not the Hunter franchise. It's not the Hunter cinematic universe. You know, it's just an episode of Hunter, and it had no aspirations to be anything beyond that. But lots of people tuned in. I mean, it was a really popular show. I remember watching it first run. Like, I remember, 80s memories of Hunter. But, now I think a lot of things feel disposable. Whereas when you get with your friends and you guys are watching, was it Rent-A-Ghost? Is that what it was?
Rent-A-Ghost, yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. I gotta look it up. There's something really cool about that, because it's not this watered down, it hasn't been monetized to death, or just like bled dry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a tricky one, that, isn't it? I mean, of course, things like the A-Team, it really, I think, 2 series, maybe 3 series, and then it ran out of steam very quickly. I think even probably the 3rd season, there was a one idea show anyway, but of course, the classic thing with Cannell was he would come up with a show, all this. But he would put it it would come on the TV, it would become a hit, and then he would get asked to do another show, and then he would bring all the best writers onto the new show, and so they kind of lost interest a little bit, I suppose, in the original show, like the A-Team, and went off to do, I don't know, Riptide or Hardcastle, McCormick, and so he just kept. And what else could you do? He was a factory. He ran a factory of TV, and he had to put his best workers on the new shiny thing. And so, of course, by the end of the A-Team, it's just like, you're like, what is this? What am I watching? And it is difficult. And things like Knight Rider, which of course is not Cannell, but I think you said, are you watching that again just now, maybe? Or
I'm not, but did you see that new
right.
Turbine Blu-ray set that came out in Germany? Have you seen that thing?
No.
Holy cow, it's amazing. So this company called Turbine is putting out, they put it out in Germany at the beginning of the year, or maybe late last year, and it's like 200 euros, I think is what it is, and it's got every episode of Knight Rider, it's got every episode of the it's got the TV movie, it's got the revival series, it's got it's like everything, and then there's like cards, like all sorts of physical goodies in there too. It's amazing, but it's 200 euros, which is that's not cheap. So
yeah,
but I love that show. I adore Knight Rider.
But I'm guessing, I mean, I've not watched, I watched it at the time, and I've only watched the odd episode since. It's the same idea though, isn't it? As in, by probably series 4 or 5, it probably, you're like, what are they doing now? But, or maybe it's not. I mean, things like Magnum PI, I think the quality is pretty good through that. I'm really amazed when I watch it. It's much more, not adult, but it's more, it's just better made than a lot of those shows. And I don't know if Knight Rider is quite like Magnum or more like A-Team, where it sort of loses steam.
It's more like A-Team, you know, by the end they bring in like Evil Kit, like the Kit,
That's
Evil
right,
Twin Car.
Mm.
But I think it's a 4-season show, and you know, I have a 4-season theory. I think that no TV show can really last beyond, I think at best every series has 4 golden years, and that's at best. And so, because after that, you think about what's happening behind the scenes, people are negotiating their contracts. They're like, well, I want more money, I want more screen time, whatever. Character arcs have been resolved. You know, you've explored if there's relationships on the show, romantic relationships. They will they, won't they? Well, they did. Now what? You know, you saw with the American version of The Office is one of the worst offenders of this. And every time I say this, people that love the American version are like, how dare you? That show's amazing. But that show, like it's a very, like the British version is better because it is this pure thing, and nobody has a chance to outlive their character's development. Like Steve Carell's character leaves the show. Spoilers for the American Office if nobody's seen it, everybody knows, right? But he leaves the show, but the show continues, and then so all these like Jim and Pam, will they? Yes, they will. Well, then they get married. Well, then they have a kid. Like there's no tension there. There's no, you know, like
yeah. I mean, I would say, I think 2 seasons is probably the best. I mean, I'm using part of the example of that is Due South, which I adore Due South, and I adored it when it was first on. And there are 2 perfect seasons. The first season is amazing. I think I've said I've said publicly before. I remember saying on Twitter, maybe 10 years ago, when Paul Haggis was still. Still the Paul Haggis. Now it's a little bit murky, but he was there. And I remember, I think I tagged him actually and said something about Due South Series 1 is, I think, one of the best, if not the best, first season of a TV show ever, which is maybe a little bit of a hyperbole, but certainly one of the strongest things. And also David Marciano tagged him. And they came back and said, oh, thank you. You know, that's very kind of you to say so. So I was quite happy about that. But anyway, Due South was amazing for those first 2 seasons, really, and then David Marciano left, and then they continued with it, and you know, I still haven't watched all the third, fourth, depending on what country you're in. It's split into 2 that last season, and I still, just because it changed completely, and Paul Gross, who I think is brilliant and a great actor and very talented guy, of course, but he sort of took over, I think, as producer or exec producer, and stamped his humor on it, and it just went way over the top. And anyway, I love Due South, so I just thought I have to get a mention for that in there. But that's yet another show that deserves a Blu-ray release. And years ago, I would have said, even till recently, I think I would have said that'll never happen. But then things like Dawson's Creek come out on Blu-ray, and I think maybe, you know, I think a lot of people in Canada would probably buy Due South, and the UK, which ended up co-financing Due South, I think a lot of people here would buy it. So that's my sort of plea to whoever brought it out. I can't think who would be releasing that now, but
Yeah, well, that's what I know. We live in an e-commerce world where you can just mail order something from anywhere. But what's the collecting scene like where you're at? Is it thriving or is it kind of, you know, on dwindling?
I think it's good. I think it's really good, actually. Yeah, we've got this company called Network, who you maybe have bought from in the past, Network DVD.
I think they put
Uh,
out Space 1999, didn't they?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Due South, actually, they brought that out here. And The Persuaders and The Prisoner and a lot of those ITC shows and various shows that, yeah, obscure, or I suppose obscure now, of course, as I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
Back in the day, they were huge, but although these things will get 18 million viewers on ITV, or usually ITV, their stuff,
Right.
and today it's forgotten. But no, they're still bringing out things. Their rate of releasing things has reduced over the years. They had a golden age maybe 10 years ago, but they're still bringing things. They're upgrading things now. They're sort of being more selective and upgrading things to Blu-ray. Some things I would never buy, but that's just because I'm not a particular fan of them. But it's brilliant that there are fans getting them. So there's that, and also the film, of course, Doctor Who. We're very lucky that the BBC has decided to restore and upgrade things to Blu-ray, and those box sets. I don't know if I've seen a video of you doing those, but
I have, yeah. I'm looking at them right now. I've got the how many do I have? I've got 8 of them, I guess.
yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, I think I lose track how many of them there are, but I've got them all. But then they started bringing out the thinner version. Actually, I just took a little collection of things. So just because you're always showing things on the,
Oh, you have things to show. Great.
I've
Great.
got my Rockford Files box set, so I did import this one because you can't buy that in the UK, can you? I think the first season was brought out in the UK, very expensive. I think the first season cost the same as all 6 seasons did to
Wow.
import. It's crazy, so nobody bought it. And this thing called Nichols, which I happen to have, which I'm a big fan of, another James Garner show from Warner Archive, I think, brought this out.
Who signed that? What does that sign? What does it say?
It's Margot Kidder, actually. Yeah, she did an event in Scotland, maybe, I keep saying 10 years ago. Everything feels like 10 years ago, but
Right.
a few years ago, she did a signing in Glasgow. And I had to go and speak to her. And the sad thing, I mean, I can show this now because she's sadly not here. But I said to her, I would love to talk to you. I'd love to interview you about working on things like Nichols. And she wrote her email address on the inside. And I can show that now because sadly, of course, she has died. I don't think anyone's checking her email address. But anyway, that's an aside. But no, just things like this. It's just going back to the idea of having to import things over here, which you do, of course. Everyone imports
Absolutely.
things in the world. Yeah. But I was going to show you there the Doctor Who. Yeah, I've got this. Is this the most recent one? No, it's not the most recent one now, actually. There's a John Pertwee.
Yeah, I don't have any of the Hartnell stuff. I've got. Does it bother you the way they're going out of order with some of this stuff? Like they're like, here's Tom Baker season 4, and then, and then.
No, because I understand why they're doing it. I think they're doing it partly because of the accessibility of the guests or the interviewees and things like that, and
yeah,
and partly I think just to keep it fresh, because if they released lots of black and white sets in order, right, I'm guessing the sales might be slightly lower. I don't know what the sales are like, but I'll buy these. These are quite big to have on the shelf, but then they re-released them smaller versions, so I've been buying those and selling on these because I'm not too bothered about packaging.
Yeah,
this is very nice, but it's still huge.
Looks good. It is huge. Have you seen the American ones?
I think I have. Yeah, I think
I was gonna go pull them, but I don't need to if you've seen them. Yeah, they're much thinner, but they leave off because yours comes with some paper goods, right? It has sides. Ours does not. Yeah. They don't even do slip covers for ours now. You just get the plastic case.
Yeah.
It's okay.
We get this thing here with the sort of comes away and it's very nice, but I'm happy to buy and these goes for crazy money sometimes on eBay.
Really?
They did anyway when they first started coming out, but no, so Doctor Who I'll buy. I can't remember where I was going originally with the conversation, but Doctor Who I'll buy all those. And you're asking about the sort of market here. I think it's good. I mean, there's a company. One example is a company. Is it Fabulous Films? I think they're called. They brought out Magnum on Blu-ray, so maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And recently they brought out. There's this TV show called Wurzel Gummidge, which I don't know. You'll know.
Pertwee, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's a show I remember watching when I was young, and it's just it brings back so many memories. It's so well made, and it's for anyone that doesn't know, it's John Pertwee plays Wurzel Gummidge, who's a scarecrow, and of course the scarecrow comes to life and has all these adventures in this little village in England. So for many years we had the DVD version of this, and it just looked absolutely terrible. And it's like it was through shot in darkness or something all the way through it. It just looked terrible. And that is a show I never thought we would get on Blu-ray because it's just so, I don't know, it's just, I keep saying obscure, but it's, of all the shows, that feels like it's well known. People know of it, but it just,
it's niche.
Anyway, yeah. And so, but it did come out. So there's some fans in the UK that kind of found the negatives. And I think they found it in some strange place, like I don't know if it was a church hall or something, but they found these negatives and were trying to get them, find a company to release them for a few years. And then it went silent. And I thought, right, well, that's never going to happen. But it did. And they came out maybe 3 or 4 months ago. Wow. Stunning Blu-rays, absolutely gorgeous, amazing extras, commentaries, archival clips from old news shows. They would have John Pertwee would go on in character, interviews that people maybe did with him, fans who went to meet him and had their little tape recorders, and they've now been digitized. And you just think, if that's coming out, and it cost maybe 70 pounds, maybe 65, maybe 60 pounds for that box set, which is a lot of money for maybe 4 or 5 seasons of maybe 6 episodes each, roughly.
Yeah.
But I just thought, well, I've got to support that because people have gone to the effort of doing this, and I want more of this stuff. There's a second series called Wurzel Gummidge Down Under, when they went to New Zealand. And I believe they found the negatives, but I think they were actually in New Zealand and they got caught up with COVID and things like that. So they couldn't import them and stuff. So I think we might be getting that as well. And so, yeah, that's kind of a long way of saying I think the market is probably healthy-ish at the moment.
Well, I know a lot of Jerry Anderson shows are getting Blu-ray releases too, things that we never even got here. Like Terrahawks, I think, has a Blu-ray box set, and because I cover a lot of Australian releases, right? And people will be like, "You should buy they're in their DVDs from Australia," and people are like, "You need to get the UK Blu-ray," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah, Network are fantastic, and I remember, just as an aside, I bought their Persuaders box set a few years ago, and they had an event in London with Roger Moore, and you could go and I got to meet him. He signed my box set of the Persuaders, which was, what an amazing day that was, going down for that. So
wow,
those guys are incredible. And there's a series which I'll recommend, why not, seeing I'm here, that they released, called The Strange World of Gurney Slade, which is very obscure. Or I keep saying, okay, I'll need to stop using that word obscure. But if we're talking about, if we are using the word obscure, that is almost the definition of obscure. It was a show made in 1960, let's say 67, 66, 67, starring Anthony Newley. And he plays this character called Gurney Slade, who's a sitcom character. And in the first episode, in the first scene, he is in a scene of a sitcom, but he walks out of the sitcom because he gets bored. So the other characters are saying to him, and I know that trying to describe things like this doesn't really do any justice, but they're trying to engage this actor in the scene, and he's just like, nah, and out he goes. And it's just this crazy program about this guy who...
This sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's even hard to describe. And it's been used, they've said a lot of times, it's it inspired The Prisoner, or it's kind of The Prisoner before The Prisoner.
It's 1960, and IMDb describes it as Gurney Slade wanders from place to place after breaking the fourth wall to escape from the mundanities of making a family sitcom.
Yes.
That's brilliant.
It's very hard to describe.
Yeah.
But I mean, the DVD came out, and that was a revelation to me. And then they released the Blu-ray set network maybe a couple of years ago, and that is beautiful, just beautiful restoration, lovely box set. And there's also a film that comes with it called The Small World of Sammy Lee, which is an incredible Anthony Newley film, which I would recommend to everybody. But that comes free with this set, and that deserves to be on its own in a box. So yeah. If anyone wants to try something a bit different, please buy Gurney Slade. You could probably get the DVD on eBay if you're in the US, probably cheap now, because that's been out for quite a while.
Okay.
Blu-ray's worth getting if you can.
That's really cool. You've met a lot of people. You were talking about some of the people that you've met, Roger Moore, Margot Kidder, both in your professional work, even outside of the books you've written. I know you've met a lot of people. I don't want you to name names, but have you ever been disappointed by a celebrity encounter? They say don't meet your heroes. Have you been let down by any of your heroes?
No, not really. No, I think one person I interviewed for my Tremors book, randomly, was a little dismissive of being in Tremors. Well, I won't say which one it was. One of the sequels. Okay. But they spoke to me, which was very nice of them. But I couldn't get much out of them, and I could sort of sense it was almost like they didn't want to be speaking to me from LA at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, but they'd set up the interview. So anyway, no, really, most people have been lovely.
Clancy Brown is the one that I was wondering about, because I heard an interview with Clancy Brown and he was super grumpy about Highlander. He did not want to name Davis and Panzer. He would not even name who they were. He said they were vultures, and that he was like, I got no money from that. I got no he was like, it was a terrible shoot. I got very little money for that. And those guys are just like vultures. They just swooped in and picked up the script from a college kid. And he was really negative about the whole thing. And I don't necessarily get that from your encounter with him. So I was like, how was Clancy Brown?
He was lovely. I mean, I think so the first thing, I suppose, he was paid to come to Scotland. So he was here, on someone else's dime, I suppose, which maybe made him feel a bit happier. But at the same time, no, he was very he felt very genuine. He didn't have to say nice things about the film, I don't think. But no, he was lovely. I can't really think of many things to say apart from I got to meet him on the red carpet, first of all, because I was working for a kind of website at the time. And I didn't lie to them exactly, but I said, I'll interview him for the website. And then I got another interview with him, and I kept that one for myself because I thought I want to write the book and I want to keep these things secret. Mm-hmm. So I got 2 interviews with him, I suppose, over 2 days. And of course, it's tough because you only have maybe, I think the first time, maybe 8 or 9 minutes with him on the carpet. And then maybe not even that much, maybe 6 minutes. And then the second time, the next day, was maybe 20 minutes. So you just don't have much time, of course, to get to know anyone. And that's not the point of doing it. But he was just very, very honest. And that's something I found. I mean, I'd spoken briefly to the costume designer, Jim Aitchison, for Highlander. And he told me, I think by email, about that he'd had a bit of a problem with Clancy on set. And I think if it had just been him saying that to me, I wouldn't have probably used that in the book. I might not have done, because it's that thing of he said, she said. Mm-hmm. I don't want ever to get sued for writing books.
Yeah.
But also, So, but then when I spoke to Clancy, I kind of raised it slightly and said something about that encounter without wanting to probe too deeply or annoy him. But he held his hands up and he says, "Yeah, I didn't act very well. I was young." He was 23 or 4 at the time. It must be, for a young actor, who is being touted as probably the next Schwarzenegger or the next big thing, I can imagine your ego must get away with you a little bit, or run away from you. So he was just very honest, and he said, "Yeah, I made a mistake. I was in the wrong about this encounter that they had." Basically, Clancy started taking bits of the costume off, and of course, the costume designer had spent hours and days making this beautiful costume, and there's Clancy ripping bits off. And he was like, "What are you doing?" And they had a bit of a falling out. So I suppose just to say, it was nice to be able to sort of set the record straight, or at least, hear what it was actually like being. And that's what I wanted to find out. What was it like being a young actor at your kind of potentially your peak? Because who knew where his career was going to go? But
Right.
at that point in your career when, you could do what you wanted almost and act like an idiot. And people probably wouldn't tell you off for it. And so it was really interesting speaking to this guy, 30 years later, who could look back at his younger self and say, "Yeah, I was a bit of a jerk," but so that was nice. And that's the nice thing about interviewing people and speaking to them is just trying to delve a bit deeper into what it was like being on the set of our favorite films.
Mm-hmm.
Like Local Hero. I don't know if you've seen Local Hero, but Peter Rieger is in there, and he's the kind of star of it, I suppose, although he would say that everybody's a star in that because all the character actors kind of steal scenes from him. But for me, it was interesting. He spoke to me for 2.5 hours, which is incredible. He doesn't need to do that. Nobody needs to speak to me. Of course they don't. And I just always appreciate when they do. But for 2.5 hours, and I said to him, in this film, there's a scene set at a ceilidh, which is a dance. It's a dance sequence in a village hall. And I said, in a lot of Scottish films, there are ceilidhs. It's kind of a trope almost that you have in, I Know Where I'm Going, and other films. You will have a ceilidh sequence. And I said, did you kind of know that was something special? And he says, totally. He says, I was a fan of Ealing films. He says, I felt I was in an Ealing film. When I walked on the set, I knew I was in something special, and he kind of knew he was in a classic. He knew that 40 years later, someone would be asking him this question, and I found that fascinating. He was sort of hyper aware that he was in a very special. How lucky he was. And of course, you speak to other actors, and they're just like, who knew? I didn't know that was going to happen, or it was just another job. Whereas for him, it was something so special. So I love that, and it brings me, of course, closer to the actor and to the film that I love. And hopefully the point is to bring you, the reader, closer as well. Because these books are not really about me saying, I think Tremors 2 is about this, and I think that this is a bad scene, and I think this actor's not very good, or I really love this. For me, it's more about speaking to the people who were there and just trying to get their message across about what they were thinking, why they did it, what worked, what didn't work. And if I can get that across and people go, oh, wow, I didn't know that, or I think that guy's quite cool, or not me, but the people, the actors or whoever, then I've succeeded, really. Because you are me, the reader is me, hopefully, another fan.
Right. Does that take some of the burden off of you to feel like you have to shape a narrative and you just let the stories take you where they need to go? There's so many documentaries now that don't have a narrative at all. It's like, maybe I'll name them when we're not recording, but they exist to say, hey, remember this thing? Wasn't that great? And there's no substance to it. There's no story to it. There's no, what I mean? There's these entire documentaries that are coming out now, and it's just like, hey, remember so-and-so? It was great. And it's just talking heads like, I saw it on VHS and it was blah, blah. And they're not telling us anything we don't know. It's like serving nostalgia. But that's obviously not what you want to do. It's not what I want to do either. So when you're having these conversations with these guys, are you you're letting their stories inform what your chronicle is going to be. But do you feel any responsibility yourself to say, this, I have to serve the truth. I have to, it's this line between commerce and art is, I guess, what I'm saying? Like, do you feel a pull, a balance that you have to walk?
Well, I don't know if this quite answers it. I mean, there's definitely what, of course, is interesting speaking to some of these books. I think Highlander was 50 people I spoke to, and the same with Tremors. You get alternate versions of the same story, of course, and so that is a challenge. And the same thing happened with Local Hero. When I spoke to, I won't name names, but I spoke to a couple of people who were very close to it, and said slightly different things, although one was maybe from archive material and one was from a new interview. And so if I'd just gone with the new interview, it was effectively wrong. But it's 40 years ago, and I can't remember. I mean, no reason I would remember what I was doing when I was 7. But, if it was 20 years ago even, I'd be struggling to remember what I did at work. And so for people to try and remember 40, so people get things wrong. So I kind of then was luckily, if I'm doing my research properly, I can then go back and say, which I did by email, saying, is this really what happened? Or is this kind of did you mean to say this? And in this case, they said, oh, well, actually go with this other story because that's probably correct. And I know that's not giving, it's maybe a bit too vague, but it's just, I feel a sort of responsibility to, you mentioned about the truth, just to try and find the truth and try and tell the truth, I suppose. And that can be difficult when there are so many stories, or the other thing, I suppose, is when I do research and I just can't find the research. There's just nothing's been written down, or it's really vague, or people miss bits out. So I just want to then try and go to the source and find out things. So again, I don't quite know if that answers your question, but
I don't know that I asked a clear question either.
Well, it's a difficult
I'm
one.
I'm always interested in, like balancing art with commerce, because there's so much nostalgia is a product, right? And you want people to buy your books, you want people to read them, but you also want to be in service of the truth. You don't want to, shape something that didn't happen. This is an example of kind of what I'm talking about, and what you're just talking about too, is like we just had Peter Jackson's Beatles documentary Get Back. And I heard an interview, I think it was McCartney, talking about, like, I remembered it this way, but there it is on screen. It's something else. It's not, that's, all this time I thought this, but it was really this other thing. And we have these primary accounts of what actually happened. And I don't know. I think there's a struggle that I perceive, even when I interview people, I'm kind of like, not with it. I knew this was like talking to you is super easy, but when you're talking to, sometimes you're like, how am I going to shape what's the inroad here, So I'm always curious, maybe what your creative process is. Do you feel a responsibility? That's one of the things, is like, how much of you do you want to come through in your book? Because you are in your books. They're not about you, but you are telling the story.
Yeah, well, again, it's hard to answer, but I mean, just an example of something that was said to me once by someone that I interviewed for the Highlander book, and I maybe mentioned it. I can't remember if I did in another podcast or whatever. I won't mention them again. It's not controversial or anything, but this person said it was about. When I interview people, you're right. People want, not salacious necessarily, but they do want revelations a lot of the time.
They want dirt. They want dirt.
Yeah, of course. And I don't push for that. But a lot of the time, of course, that's based on, like any conversation, like this conversation, or just you can sense we are hopefully attuned to be able, smart enough to be able to sense when somebody doesn't want to talk about something. And if you try and broach that subject, they're just going to shut down. Mm-hmm. And that is the case with a lot of these actors, because of course there are things that happened on set that we don't know about, and we probably don't need to know about. And that's what one of the people on Highlander said to me, was something along the lines of, I don't want to tell you negative things because I don't want the fans to think negatively of the film. I want people to read this book and watch the film and remember, not then think, oh, there was someone having an affair behind the scenes, or this person stormed out of the room and said something really nasty to this other person. And so that kind of stuck with me a bit. And I thought, well, you are someone who was very close to you. You worked on the film, and you're saying this. That means that is something I think I need to remember. And and I was kind of doing that anyway. But there were some comments, and there have been comments made to me in interviews that people will just throw out there, and they'll say something, and I think, oh, you probably didn't mean to say that, or you would say that to your friend in the pub. You don't really want this in a book, and I just won't put it in. And I've only ever read one review on Amazon about Tremors, where someone said, and of course it's one of the reviews that comes up to the top, because that's the way Amazon likes to do the positive and the negative. But someone says something about, no, it's not controversial, something like that. The book is not controversial. Everybody was happy. They had a good time. Now that's not that's not really the case in the book. It's not all like that. There is some it's not even negativity. It's just the cut and thrust of business, and there's things in there that are, I think, as a film fan, or just you'll find interesting about the industry. And that's also what I want to try and get in these books. You don't have to just be a Highlander fan. Hopefully you'll find it interesting about marketing films, or how films are released in different countries. But yeah, so this comment did come up, and I was thinking, well, people aren't going to tell me stuff that's really, really controversial, because, and if I did that, then people will never speak to me again, probably. And
yeah,
but it's also a balance, I think, between not wanting to come across as too, not just be a puff piece. You know, of course, that's something else I don't want. I mean, I'm very proud and happy that Peter Riegert, for example, emailed me a few weeks ago and said, I loved your book. You know, thank you for writing this book. And that means a lot. And it's not so much that he's saying, thank you for making me look good. I think it's probably more, it means such a lot to him and other people involved in it, that if a book comes out that tells the truth, but celebrates something, that's why I want my books to be a celebration. So I'm not looking for the actors to email me and then we'll all be best friends. But at the same time, do people really need to know? You know, Highlander was made in 1985, and it's the same now. But back then, you know, things like drug taking and on film sets they happened, and you know, Russell Mulcahy I'm not saying Russell Mulcahy was taking drugs, but he was working in film. You know, he was a music video director. I mean, the stuff that he must have seen in the 80s. Oh, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Or I can imagine. And I think he's probably talked about it in other books. But I didn't push him on that. I didn't say, so, Russell, can you tell me, were you taking drugs? Was anyone else? Was that what was happening? How did you film those night scenes? Whereas, I mean, it could be fun to hear that, but do you need to know that? I don't know. It might be nice, but I don't think it really enhances your enjoyment that much. But then, you know, if someone wants that, they can write the book. That's what I say in the Tremors book, I think, at the start, is something along the lines of, my book is this. If someone wants this other book, please go and write it, and I'll probably buy it. You know.
I love that. There's a difference between journalism and exploitation. And I think a lot of times we're seeing exploitation in the place of journalism. And you have integrity, and it shows. What you just said, that's integrity, you know? Just because you have information doesn't mean you have to share that with people, especially if it's going to hurt someone. But I don't know that everybody feels that way. I'm glad you do.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. You know, I mean, of course I could. Of course, I don't think I'm wrong, but I could put in some of these things. And yes, maybe it would get a few more things in the papers, in the newspapers or online. But yeah, I just don't think it's right. I mean, someone said something to me, again, I won't say what it is, but they said, will I say? It was about, no, I won't say, but it was about an actor, very famous Scottish actor. And they said something, and they said, look, maybe don't say that, because this person is so well loved that you don't need to say that. Yeah, again, you just don't need to say it. So no, I think that's all I'd say, really. It's and the fact that people seem to enjoy the books, that's kind of proof, I think, that I'm doing something right. And
you are. And I don't necessarily want to like pump you for information on what's coming next, but I am curious, what's the future looking like for you? How many projects do you have in the pipeline?
Yeah, it's tricky. So I have a day job. Which, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know. People say to me, "What do you do?" I mean, I don't think of myself as an author as such because I've written 3 books, which makes me an author. But at the same time, people write hundreds of books, and that's how they make their income, make their living. And I find it's not easy to make a living from writing books.
Yeah.
So I just have to think about where the money's coming from. So I have a day job, which I enjoy, and I have other bits of freelance work that come in, which is great. So the books are at the moment, and always really have been, a sort of side project. So I suppose weekends. These books were all written in weekends and in evenings, and so I suppose that's just sort of saying it's not that I'm always thinking about writing a new book, but I don't always have the time to.
Yeah.
So tonight, obviously, we're having a chat. It's 5 or 6 hours ahead of you in the US, so it's in the evening, and tonight I won't, and that's fine. I'll just go when this finishes. I'll probably go to bed. But in most evenings, I'm just too tired to sit down now and write a book. So I'm working. So that's one part of it. And then the other side is it's just very hard work writing a book. And again, I'm not looking for praise or anything, but I want it to be the best it can be. And to do that, you have to put more effort into it. It's up to people to judge. Again, not looking for any comments on that, but I'll spend longer than I maybe need to sometimes. I'm sure we all do. Anyone that's creating something, like you make your videos, you put effort into it that we don't see, and I'm sure things go wrong and you have to put extra effort, and the amount of hours you must put into it. So we all do that. Anyway, that's one thing. Actually, answering the question about what's next, I've been working on a few things over the years in the background. So the books I've written that are out there, those are sort of in the background from the day job, but there are other books in the background to those that I've been sort of toying with. So one of the books I'm working on is, I mentioned Jim Henson. Basically, it's the things I love. So anything I've mentioned in this chat, I'm probably going to write a book on it. In a way, there's something in that. So Henson, I love Jim Henson, and I've been interviewing people. There's a series of books called Walt's People, which I don't know if you stumbled across them on Amazon, but they've been going for maybe for quite a few years now, and there's maybe something like 25 volumes, and it's interviews with people who worked with Walt Disney. And so I thought, well, why has that not been done for Jim Henson? Or I basically thought, I'll do that. Let's do that for Jim Henson.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing for maybe 4 or 5 years, interviewing people who work with Jim Henson. That's the way. So that's what I've been doing. Now, unfortunately, or whatever you want to look at it, these books like Highlander and Local Hero, someone's paid me, a publisher has paid me to write these. So that's something I have a contract, so I need to get. So that's the priority. But the great thing is I've been stacking up these other interviews in the background. So these are people like a chap called Duncan Kenworthy, who he kind of co-created. He was right there at the start of Fraggle Rock. They all went into a room to talk about what's this new show going to be, and he was one of the people, and he exec produced Fraggle Rock. And The Storyteller with John Hurt, he was a big part of that. So we spoke for an hour or so about that. And so just various people who were puppeteers, who were producers, who maybe there's a guy who worked in the publishing division of Henson, who you will probably never, you would never think I must go and look for an interview with the guy that worked on the magazines, but he's a fascinating guy because he was working in the studio where they were filming the Muppet Show when it was happening. And he talks about Gene Kelly walking past and being called down to help with the Muppets, use the puppets when Gene Kelly was there, and Gene Kelly looking down at him, smiling, and, just things like that, which, like all these books, I'm just trying to capture these stories for posterity because no one else is doing it. So that's one book, and that'll just be, I think, transcribed interviews because I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I'm doing it. I don't want to make it sound like I'm just trying to get them out the door quickly. But I think with these sorts of things, you could spend the time and turn it into the sort of book that I've done with Highlander, and it's the full history. But it's very difficult to do that with 20 people who worked on all these different projects. It's difficult to weave that together into a narrative. So really, it's just going to be interview. Austin Pendleton, who was in the Muppet movie, spoke to him. Lovely guy, and talks about working with Charles Durning and what it was like working with Jim Henson, and just these sort of slightly random people that you might recognize the name of the guy that helped design Muppet Vision 3D for Disneyland. Spoke to him, and that was basically the last project that Jim Henson worked on before he died. And as he was trying to sell, as the deal was going through with Disney, he died, and it was just so. I think, although it's going to be transcripts, there will be things that pop up, that threads that pop up in one interview that will be sort of paid off in another interview with someone who doesn't know the other person, but they're talking about Jim Henson, what his thought process was. Kirk Thatcher, I spoke to him. He worked on Dinosaurs, and I think he worked on Dinosaurs. I don't want to get people mixed up now, but I think it was Dinosaurs. Bill Beretta, who people will know does the voice of Pepe. He didn't work with Henson, so actually I just really wanted to speak to him. So in a way I might cheat a little bit, but I think he might be in the book. So anyway, there's that book, and then the other one I've been working on is a book about 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s action shows. And that's where my love of Steve Cannell. It's been speaking to people who work with him, and worked on Magnum, and the chap that did the theme tune to Knight Rider, whose name's gone out of my head. But I think I spoke to him, but there was a few years ago, so I feel I've let these things go a little bit. So I just need to try and get them back, revive them a little bit. So those are things that I'm working on, and maybe do different volumes of them. Maybe there'll be 2 volumes of Henson. I don't know.
That's exciting.
Yeah, because I love it. And I mentioned David Marciano earlier, just a great actor that I love. He was in Wise Guy, I think, for a few episodes, and of course Due South. So I spoke to him. Great, just incredible that I got to speak to him. And Jay Semko, who did the music for Due South. Now, of course, maybe some of it is a little bit on the edge of being in an action show, but he's an interesting guy. He's got his own take on working on this TV show. So so those are a couple of things. I think you might like them.
I think I might. Yeah, both of those are directly up my alley. I love everything that you've done, and I wanted to say that I really appreciate your tone and your approach. It really speaks to me. I enjoy your work immensely because you are telling deeper stories. You're telling stories that mean something in a way that resonates. It feels human, it feels relatable, and it doesn't feel, that's what I was saying. There's a difference between journalism and exploitation. Your stuff really has a seal of quality to it. So I wanted to thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. That's very nice to hear. Yeah, when you're sitting at your computer for so many hours, it's lovely to hear that. And just to say in return, I love your videos. I love what you're doing, and the fact that you're telling people about these things, reminding people, introducing people to all these shows that we've known, and you're discovering new things as well. And I think your excitement and it shines through, and your genuine love of this stuff is great. So I hope more people discover this channel.
Thank you very much. I want to be very respectful of your time because of our time difference, but is there anything else that we should cover while I've got you here? Did we hit it all? We could have talked for 5 hours, I think.
But I want to plug a couple of books just while I'm here, because before I was saying about a moving house, so I've been packing a lot of stuff away, but there are some things left on the shelf. And I just wanted to say the book that kind of inspired me to write my book on Tremors was this book here. Now, this is the latest version. I've actually got the one before that as well, because there's stuff in it that isn't in the newer one. And I used to have the original version, which I bought when I went to Canada in 1996, I think it was. An amazing book by Ed Robertson. If you love the Rockford Files, even if you don't love the Rockford Files, I think you'll enjoy this book.
I have something to tell you after we finish recording.
Okay. It's just an incredible book, and I ripped off, if you ever if you happen to be someone that wants to read about Rockford and Tremors, which of course we probably would, you'll notice that some of the stuff, the format and the style, I was like, how did you write an episode guide? Because there was a Tremors TV series. How did you write an episode guide? How did Ed Robertson do it? Oh, right, okay, I'll copy him. So there's that. And also just another book which he wrote on Maverick. I love Maverick.
Just came out, the complete series just came out on DVD here in the US like 2-3 weeks ago. Maverick.
Really? On DVD?
Yep.
Because it came out a few years ago from Warner, probably Warner again, but they brought out single sets and they re-released it. I didn't know that. I might have to get
the box set now.
Wow. Wow.
I don't have it yet. See, I've let the community down because I haven't done a video about it yet, but I don't have it yet.
Well, I would have found out through you probably. And I feel bad that I didn't know about it. I have bought the first season on DVD, and actually I bought it on bootleg at an event here in Scotland a few years before it, because there was no sign of it coming out on DVD.
Right.
So I shouldn't really admit that. But a few things like Riptide has never come out on DVD, I don't think. The Cannell show.
I think it came out here in America from VEI, which is the company that's doing all these Cannell shows, but it went out of print like within a year. I think it came out in 2017 and immediately went out of print.
Yeah. So I remember getting that on bootleg. I would buy it if I saw it, honestly. Like you've seen my, sorry, it's like a Christmas time here with all my goodies. But I showed you this before. I don't know if it was actually caught on camera, but my Greatest American Hero DVD set that I bought back in that's maybe 15 years or so. I'll just show you because I don't know if you've seen inside this thing.
No, before. I haven't.
But you get the cape. So the Ralph Hinckley's cape comes in it.
That's
which
amazing.
I think I put on when it came out. But
did it work?
Can you see? Is that the right way around?
No.
I think it must be around that way.
So the people that are listening to this in audio format, you have to go to YouTube to check out the video version. Look at that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's got the logo on it.
Yeah.
And then in this box, sorry guys that are listening to the podcast, there's a book, the instruction manual that Ralph gets in the show.
Oh wow.
You get a copy of it.
Look at that.
And you can sort of see in there. And I think depending, it's like lenticular, so it kind of does different things. And I think it switches on. I think there's a light that does something. Instructions. So it's quite a cool thing. And of course, it's got the DVDs in there, thankfully. And there's a transfer in there. You can put a sticker on, I think, for.
Nice.
Anyway, so anything. So you asked me. I'm just showing you a few random things.
I love it. I love it. We started with collecting and we're ending with collecting.
Totally, yeah. But those Ed Robertson books, please. Incredible, just so much detail in them, and of course Maverick sort of basically inspired Rockford, didn't it? That Rockford is Maverick in the 70s and 80s. But these books I just go back to again and again because they're so well done. And he keeps bringing out new versions with more interviews. And I think, how much more is there to tell about Rockford? And he finds 5 new people. So
yeah.
Anyway, we could be here all night. But
do you see yourself doing any revisions of your books as you like have access to more people? Do you think would you do that?
Yeah, I've thought about the Tremors book because when I as I was writing it, when I started writing it, there were 4 films and a TV show. And as I was coming to the end of writing it, there was a 5th film in production. So the last chapter is really just me going on Facebook and Twitter and trying to find people talking about it. It's not, I just didn't have much. And then since then, there's been another 2 movies and the failed pilot that came out, or didn't even come out. So, and also I've done a couple more interviews with people that I couldn't find the first time. So part of me does think maybe I should bring out a newer version.
And I think that Tremors is actually more popular in the fan culture now than it was, 7 years ago? Was it 2015?
Yeah. So that might happen. I'm also sort of toying with audiobook ideas as well maybe for Tremors, maybe for Highlander. Because there's the publisher who's great, Pete at Polaris here in Edinburgh, who released Highlander and Local Hero. but he's not done them as audiobooks. Audiobooks are very expensive to bring out, and Amazon takes a lot of money on Audible from producers, so it's very difficult to make money. So the rights to Highlander are back with me. The rights to Tremors were always with me, and Local Hero will probably be back with me in a year or so. But anyway, yes, I think Tremors might deserve a little bit more love. I love those movies. It's another video. We should talk about Tremors.
Yeah, we should. Well, this has been a blast. I want to thank you so much for your time and just your enthusiasm. I love it.
Thank you. No, it's been when you asked me to come on, I just thought, hey, this is brilliant. I get to talk about Rockford. Oh, you were going to say something about that, or was that after?
I'm going to tell you after. I'll tell you after.
Okay. But no, I get to talk about Rockford, Maverick, Greatest American Hero, Doctor Who. This is a dream chat. You should invite all the listeners on.
It's because I knew we could just talk. I knew that we were both coming from the same place and we could just geek out. And I think this was amazing. So,
well, I know. Listen, I know I don't know how long we've spoken for, and listeners are probably tuned out by now. But I just wanted to say very quickly, because you mentioned, I think just didn't really come up properly. Yeah. But one person I just want to mention was a lady called Marcia Strassman, an actress who you maybe know the name of. She was in Welcome Back, Kotter, and she was in episodes of MASH, and she was in Tremors, the series. This is my Tremors book. And I just want to say, I've mentioned her quite a few times in interviews. I spoke to her for this book, and she was the nicest woman. And she's one of, speaking to people like her are the things that make this really special and that make me want to continue to do this, because she was such a lovely woman. And we talked about making the series, and she talked about how, which is one thing. But then we talked about her life as an actress. And she was maybe in her, I'm going to say maybe late 50s, maybe early 60s when we spoke in 2013 or 14. She'd had cancer. She was a cancer survivor. And which was sort of an aside. She mentioned it, but it was an aside. She talked about being an older actress, but getting roles that were not good at that time. I think she was doing things for Hallmark Channel. She didn't enjoy it. But she also spoke about James Garner. She spoke about, she'd been in Rockford, and she told me stories about working with Jim Garner and about hanging out with John Belushi. And I have told this story before about how she was friends with John Belushi. And one night, Belushi was at her house. And James Garner phoned up and said, I've got this Atari system. I don't know how to work it. Do you know anyone? And she was like, to John Belushi, do you know anything about Atari? And he says, sure. She says, it's Jim Garner. He says, Rockford wants us to go round and fix his Atari. So she told the story about how they went round, and John Belushi was totally in awe of James Garner and just how he was the nicest guy. So as someone who's a Rockford fan, to hear someone who was a friend of him, and she was also a fan of Doctor Who. She loved Peter Capaldi. She loved I think she loved Sherlock. She loved British TV. And then she said to me at the end of the call, phone back sometime, we'll have a chat. And I said, yes. Okay. Oh, yeah, sure. And I never did. And she died. She died maybe within a year, maybe 2 years. I can't quite remember. But I remember at the time just thinking, oh, that's so sad. I'll never get to speak to her again. I only spoke to her for an hour about an old TV show. It's a story that's an aside, really, but it just kind of talks, for me, it just makes it just a little bit more special doing this, because you get to speak to people why would I ever hear a story about John Belushi and James Garner? Maybe I would have read it in a magazine, but to hear it from someone that was there, yeah. Hollywood history, that is special. So
yeah, that's amazing.
That's
the reward. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. I'm gonna put links in the description of this episode where people can find your books, and I'll put your website, YouTube. You're on YouTube. You have your own YouTube channel.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's there. And anything else that you want me to put there. But this was a blast. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
I hope you guys had as much fun with this conversation as I did. It's the longest episode, as I said, because the time just flew by. I mean, I don't even know like how long we talked. I usually try to keep people for about an hour because I want to be respectful of their time, and I also know, I mean, I don't know what the audience attention span is. Coming from YouTube and these analytics that I get, it seems like it's short, but I know that a lot of people love these in-depth conversations. So what do you think about the longer length of this conversation? Do you want to see more stuff like that? Furthermore, let me ask you guys another question. So in a previous podcast, I kind of sailed the idea out there by you guys of some episodes that aren't necessarily interviews, that are just me talking about, shorter subjects or topics, or like a comic I'm reading or something like that. I did not get a lot of feedback on that idea one way or the other. What I did get is someone was like, why have you not done like an Ask Me Anything for your podcast? Now, I've done them for YouTube, but they were like, why don't you do an Ask Me Anything for your podcast? And people can send in their questions. So let's do that. I'm going to ask you guys for questions. We'll plan on, at some point when I've got enough to do an episode, I'll do like an AMA for the podcast. Just whatever you're curious. Doesn't have to be just collecting talk. It can be something about me that you're curious about, like your personal preferences or life experiences or anything like that. And just send them to CerealMidnite@gmail.com, or if you're watching this in video form on YouTube, you could comment with your question there too. You contact me on social media. The links are always in the description of the episode. So if you want to do it, let's do it. I'm game. I'm your Huckleberry. Guys, thanks so much. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe to this podcast. Subscribe to the Cereal at Midnight YouTube channel so you never miss a review. Going up this week as I'm recording this, there's a review for The Maltese Falcon on 4K. I've got in the pipeline, I've got a review for the Rebel Without a Cause on 4K, and something that's really near and dear to my heart is this serial of the Green Hornet, the first serial, 1940, for the Green Hornet. I'm going to do a full Cereals at Midnight treatment. I only do this it's very sporadic. I think I've done 3 to date. I did one for King of the Rocket Men, which was a major inspiration for the Rocketeer. I did one for Superman, the first Superman serial, well before there was even a Superman TV show. And I did one for the first Flash Gordon, Buster Crabbe, the very first Flash Gordon serial. So I think it's time, with the Blu-ray release of the Green Hornet from VCI, I think it's time that we do one for that serial as well. So stay tuned for those things, but you're only going to get them if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. So again, links in the description. Guys, I appreciate you so very much. Stay tuned. There's a lot of exciting things coming. We got an in-depth conversation coming soon about the Funhouse. That'll be hitting the podcast feed soon. So guys, thanks so much. Take care. Until next time, I will catch you later.